Somewhere in you, quietly, there's probably a version of a rescue fantasy. Not a childish one, a grown, sophisticated one. The right opportunity finally arriving. The right person finally understanding you without you having to explain. The circumstances finally lining up so the hard part of rebuilding your life happens to you, instead of requiring you to do it. It's not a foolish thing to want. It's human. But 3 episodes into this rebuild, it's time to say the thing that makes all of this actually work. Nobody is coming to lay these bricks for you. Not because nobody loves you. Because this particular job was never anyone else's to do. We've talked about rebuilding the structure of your life. We've talked about who you're building it for, and who's been waiting inside it. Today we talk about the person who actually has to pick up the tools. And it's not who most people are quietly hoping it will be. This episode isn't about self-reliance for its own sake, and it isn't about pretending you don't need anyone. It's about finally putting down a weight that's been quietly costing you years. The wait for someone else to start the rebuild that's always been yours to start. You'll notice, if you're honest, that this weight has probably been running quietly in the background of every other episode so far, a small hope underneath the effort that eventually someone else would step in and finish what you started. This episode is where we finally look at that hope directly, instead of letting it operate unexamined. The rescue fantasy. Almost everyone carries some version of the rescue fantasy, even people who'd never admit it out loud. The new relationship that will finally make you feel whole. The new job that will finally make the anxiety stop. The breakthrough moment that arrives from outside and does the work internal. Change was always going to require. This fantasy isn't random. It's usually inherited from stories. The ones where a hero arrives just in time, where love conquers everything, where the right circumstance transforms a person overnight. Those stories are entertaining. They're also quietly dangerous because they train you to wait for a plot twist instead of building the next scene yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth this episode is built on. The rescue you're waiting for isn't coming, at least not in the form you're picturing. Nobody is going to arrive and hand you discipline. Nobody is going to arrive and undo the years of self-doubt in one conversation. Nobody is going to want your healing more than you do. This isn't meant to sound bleak. It's meant to hand you back something you accidentally gave away. The belief that your life is something that happens to you, instead of something you actively build. That belief was costing you more than the discomfort of finally acting on your own behalf ever will. It can help to notice exactly where your version of the rescue fantasy lives. For some people it's romantic, a partner who will finally make the loneliness stop. For others it's financial, a windfall that erases the need for discipline. For others it's almost spiritual, there's a breakthrough moment so powerful it does the healing work instantly. Naming your specific version makes it much easier to see clearly, instead of letting it operate quietly in the background of every decision. Waiting is a strategy too. It's worth naming clearly. Waiting isn't neutral. Waiting is a strategy, even when it doesn't feel like one. It's the strategy of hoping conditions improve enough that action eventually feels safe, instead of building the safety yourself through action. The problem with this strategy is that it rarely delivers what it promises. Conditions don't usually improve on their own. The fear doesn't quietly resolve itself while you wait for a more convenient moment. Most people who are waiting for things to feel ready are actually waiting for a feeling that only ever arrives after they've already started. This is one of the cruelest tricks fear plays. It convinces you that readiness comes before action, when for almost everything that matters, it's the reverse. Confidence isn't the prerequisite for building. It's the byproduct of having built something, even something small, and survived it. So if you've been waiting to feel ready before you start rebuilding, ready to leave, ready to try, ready to say the honest thing, it's worth asking how long you've already been waiting and what that wait has actually produced, besides more waiting. The strategy isn't working. It was never going to. Waiting for readiness is like waiting for the water to feel warm before you get in. For most people, it only ever feels warm after they're already swimming. This is worth testing directly in something small this week. Pick one thing you've been waiting to feel ready for, and do a small version of it before readiness arrives. Send the message before you've rehearsed it perfectly. Apply before you feel qualified. Notice what actually happens to the fear once you're already moving, compared to how large it felt while you were still just imagining the first step. Blame feels like power, but isn't. There's a reason blame feels so satisfying. Even though it rarely changes anything, it lets you locate the problem outside yourself. If it's their fault, you don't have to do the harder work of examining your own part in it. Blame feels like clarity. It's usually just relief in disguise. This isn't about excusing people who genuinely hurt you. Some of that blame is accurate and deserved. It's about noticing what happens after the blame is placed correctly. Does it move you forward, or does it just become a comfortable place to stay indefinitely instead of rebuilding? Here's the trade almost nobody wants to make explicitly, but everyone makes implicitly. Blame gives you a reason. Responsibility gives you power. You can have an accurate, justified reason for why your life looks the way it does, or you can have the power to change it. Rarely both, held onto forever at the same time. This is genuinely hard to hear if you've spent years building a case, brick by brick, for why none of this is on you. Some of it isn't, but the parts that are, the choices still in front of you, the bricks still waiting to be laid, and those are yours whether or not the blame is accurate. Choosing responsibility over blame doesn't mean pretending you weren't wronged. It means deciding that being right about what happened to you matters less than being free of what happens next. This is one of the harder trades in this entire season, because being right feels good, and it's rarely, if ever, actually taken away from you. You can still be right about what happened. You're just choosing not to let being right cost you the next 10 years. The facts of the past don't change either way. What changes is whether they keep running your future by default. You'll know you've made this trade successfully when you can tell the story of what happened to you without the story controlling what you do next. The facts stay the same. Your relationship to them changes. That shift, subtle as it sounds, is often the exact difference between someone stuck for another decade and someone who finally starts moving. What waiting for someone else costs you. It's easy to underestimate what waiting actually costs, because the cost doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives quietly, one deferred decision at a time, until years have passed and the waiting has become the whole-out plan. Consider the version of you from episode 3, the one who's been waiting to be met halfway. Every day spent waiting for someone else to rescue that version of you is another day she stays exactly where she's been, unmet, uncontacted, still hoping this is the day someone finally shows up on her behalf. Nobody sends you an invoice for this cost, so it's easy to ignore. But 5 years of waiting for the right conditions is 5 years that could have been 5 years of building, however imperfectly. The debt compounds quietly, in the form of a life that looks remarkably similar year after year. This isn't said to induce panic or urgency for its own sake. It's said because most people don't calculate this cost, honestly, until they're forced to, usually much later than they wish they had. Better to calculate it now while there's still runway to do something about it. What has waiting for someone else actually cost you so far? Not in the abstract, specifically. That number, once you're honest about it, tends to be the thing that finally moves people off the wait and into the work. Do this exercise plainly, without spiraling into regret. Write down, if it helps, the actual things you've postponed while waiting, the conversation, the application, the boundary, the decision to finally start. Seeing them listed out specifically tends to carry more weight than any abstract sense that time has been passing. Vague regret is easy to ignore. A specific list is much harder to look away from. Radical responsibility isn't self-blame. It's important to draw a clear line here, because this message gets distorted often. Taking responsibility for your rebuild is not the same as blaming yourself for the ruins. Those are two entirely different postures, even though they can look similar from a distance. Self-blame looks backward and asks, whose fault was this? It's obsessed with the wreckage, replaying it, punishing yourself for it, as if enough self-criticism might somehow undo the past. It rarely produces anything except more shame, and shame has never once laid a single brick. Radical responsibility looks forward and asks a completely different question. Given everything that happened, what am I going to do about it now? It doesn't require the wreckage to be your fault. It just requires acknowledging that the rebuild, regardless of who caused the ruins, is yours to do. This distinction matters enormously, especially if some of what broke your life genuinely wasn't your doing. Illness, a betrayal, circumstances entirely outside your control. Responsibility doesn't ask you to accept blame for those things. It asks you to accept that, blame aside, you're still the only one who can pick up the next brick. That's not an insult to your pain. It's an acknowledgement of your power. Power that blame, however justified, was quietly keeping you from using. There's a simple test that can tell you which posture you're actually in any given moment. Ask whether the thought you're having leads anywhere, toward a next step, a decision, an action, or whether it just loops, replaying the same wound without ever arriving anywhere new. Self-blame loops. Responsibility, even when it's uncomfortable, always eventually points forward. Practice noticing this distinction in real time, especially in the moments right after something goes wrong. The reflex will often be self-blame first. It's familiar, and familiar feels safer, even when it isn't helpful. Give yourself permission to notice the loop, and then gently redirect toward the forward-facing question. It gets easier with repetition, the same way every other part of this rebuild has. The people who won't come. Somewhere in this process, you may have to make peace with a specific painful fact. Some of the people you were hoping would show up for this rebuild simply aren't going to. Not because they don't love you. Sometimes because they can't. Sometimes because they never learned how. Sometimes because their own rebuild is taking everything they have. This isn't a betrayal, even though it can feel like one. Expecting someone to rescue you from a job that was always yours puts a weight on the relationship it was never built to carry. Some relationships survive that expectation being released, some don't. Either way, the release itself is necessary. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or deciding you need no one. It means separating support from rescue. Support walks beside you while you lay the bricks. Rescue was always the fantasy of someone else laying them for you. You can still have support. The rescue was never actually on the table. Grieving this quietly is part of the process too. Releasing the specific people you imagined showing up and making room for whoever actually does. Sometimes that's fewer people than you expected. Often, once the expectation of rescue is gone, it's realer people showing up in realer, smaller, more sustainable ways. This can be one of the more painful realizations in the whole season, especially if the people you were counting on are family or people who've been in your life for decades. Let yourself feel that loss honestly. The same way we talked about grief back in episode 3. It doesn't make you ungrateful for what they have given you. It just means you're finally seeing the relationship clearly, instead of through the lens of what you needed it to be. God helps the one who moves. Given everything we talked about in episode 2, this might be the point where faith and responsibility seem to be in tension. If God is real, if He's present, why does any of this still have to be on you? Consider a familiar image, dry ground, and a sea that only parts once someone actually steps toward it. The miracle didn't happen before the movement. It happened in response to it. Faith and effort were never opposites in that story. The water didn't part for people standing still on the shore, waiting to see if it would. This is a pattern worth noticing throughout that entire tradition. Provision, meeting movement, not stillness. Manna still had to be gathered. The wall still had to be built stone by people who showed up with their own hands. Faith was never a replacement for participation. It was the thing that made participation possible, even without full certainty of the outcome. So this episode isn't actually in tension with episode 2. It's the practical extension of it. Trusting God was never meant to be a reason to stay still. It was meant to be the reason you're able to move at all, even when you can't yet see solid ground beneath the next step. This is often the missing piece for people who grew up hearing a lot about faith but very little about action, as if believing hard enough was the entire assignment. It never was. Belief was always meant to be the thing that gets you to the water's edge. What you do once you're standing there was always going to require your own feet. This doesn't reduce faith to mere effort either. Plenty of people move without any sense of faith at all, and it tends to look and feel like sheer willpower. Exhausting, brittle, unsustainable over the long run. The combination is what actually holds believing you're not moving alone, while still being the one who moves. Neither half works, especially well without the other. Becoming the one you were waiting for. Here's where this episode actually lands, and it's simpler than it might sound after everything we've covered. You don't need someone else to rescue you. You need to become the one who finally shows up. Think about what you were actually hoping a rescuer would provide. Consistency, belief in you when you didn't. Have it in yourself. Someone willing to stay through the hard, unglamorous parts of the rebuild. Every one of those is something you are, in fact, capable of providing for yourself. Not perfectly, not without help, but consistently. Starting today, this reframes the entire wait. You weren't actually waiting for a stranger to arrive. You were waiting to become someone dependable enough to trust with your own life. That person isn't outside you running late. She's available right now the moment you decide to stop outsourcing the job. This doesn't mean you'll never need anyone else again. The people who support you in Part 6 still matter, enormously. It means the foundation of this rebuild finally rests on someone who's actually present, you showing up. For yourself, brick by brick, the same way you'd want someone else to show up for you. Nobody's coming to save you. That's not a tragedy. It's an invitation to finally become the one who does. Carry that with you as we move into the next part of this rebuild, because the next episode asks something that's genuinely hard to do without this foundation in place. You can't heal what you're avoiding by waiting for someone else to make it safe enough to look at. You'll need exactly the person this episode has been asking you to become. Someone willing to finally show up for the parts of yourself nobody else ever fully will. So take a moment before this episode ends to actually notice what's changed. Not everything, just the direction. You started this episode quietly hoping someone else would eventually carry this. You're ending it having agreed, even if reluctantly, to carry it yourself. That agreement, made honestly today, is worth more than years of waiting for. Permission you were never actually going to receive from anyone else. If this hits something in you, subscribe. Next week, we start healing what most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Tell me honestly in the comments, what have you been waiting for someone else to do that you're finally ready to do yourself? Never forget, you're stronger than you think. Before you go, next episode we go somewhere most people avoid entirely, because you can take full responsibility for your rebuild and still be building on top of wounds you've never actually let yourself feel. Next episode, heal what you've been avoiding. I'll see you in the next chapter.